Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this episode of From Pillar to Post. My name is Joe White, and as you can tell by the opening song here, this episode is titled "Taking Care of Business" because there's a lot of people taking care of business today, and we got an interview talking about the business of professional wrestling coming up later here in the episode. Starting off at the top here, I want to talk a little bit. There's a lot on your screen. A lot of it comic book related, a lot of it video game related, a lot of it movie related. But we're going to get into all that here. Let's start off with Shang-Chi. The big trailer dropped this week. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. I like the trailer, but it very well left me wanting more. You can tell that the how do I put this? It's not as impactful as past trailers. I do think it's going to be a good movie. It's going to be a decent movie. Is it going to be the best movie that the MCU has ever seen? No. To me, that will always be the first Iron Man. That's my favorite movie in the MCU. But I think it's going to be good. The action looks great. The special effects look awesome. Got a little bit of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon in there. A lot of good martial arts in there. I'm curious to see where the story goes with this one. But overall, I liked it. I'll be going to see it in theaters, as you should too. Please, folks, support your local theater. Do not support this crappy, you're going to pay $30 to see it on Disney Plus thing. Don't do it, guys, because I'll tell you right now, and I've said this before, where I live at, I could take the missus and my son to a matinee, buy drinks and popcorn, and it costs $30. So you get the experience of going to the theater, you get your drink, your snack, and everything. 3 people, $30. It's the same price. So support your local theater industry, guys. Support your theaters. ArcLight decided that they're going to close down that theater chain. So they're going bankrupt. They're not going to reopen, which is very, very sad for them. But speaking of movies, we got the first 7 minutes of Mortal Kombat released a couple of days ago as of this recording. And my God, was it bloody as hell. I do agree with Robert Meyer Burnett, who was on the John Campea show, talking about how it's digital blood, and I don't like it. I mean, I told my son, I was like, you can't go see this movie. He's 11. I was like, you cannot go see this, son. It's way too bloody for you. You just, no. The red corn syrup is flowing, folks. That's all I can say. I'm looking forward to it. That as I'm recording this portion of the podcast on the 22nd. It's dropping tomorrow, and I want to go see it in theaters so badly. I don't know if I'll get around to it or not. Now, Godzilla vs. Kong, I did watch on HBO Max. I did not go to the theaters, and I regret it because of the sound issue that it had, where everything was real low when the people were talking and moving and everything. But once the action kicked in, I had to turn the TV down. So it does have issues. I would have liked to hear it sound-wise for a theater, but Mortal Kombat, my God, that first 7 minutes left me wanting more. Please give me more. If the whole movie is that bloody and awesome, the dialogue is awesome in it, it's well written, it's well produced, it looks awesome. This is just for the first 7 minutes. Looking forward to giving my review on Mortal Kombat. Ed Boon, John Tobias, if you're still watching and keeping up with Mortal Kombat, even though Tobias hasn't been involved with Mortal Kombat for years now, many, many years now, decades even. You guys should be proud of this. It's definitely better than the ones from the 90s. Way better than the ones in the 90s. Why is Spider-Man sitting on the Disney Plus logo? Well, this comes from Variety. There's a lot of people who ask, why isn't Spider-Man, why isn't Venom Venom's not part of the MCU, but why is Spider-Man Homecoming and Far From Home not on Disney Plus? Well, here's the reason. Those movies are not distributed by Disney. They're distributed by Sony. And Sony owns, now, For those who don't know, let's take a deeper dive. Back in the 90s, in the mid-90s, Marvel was close to going bankrupt. This is before Disney acquired Marvel, and Marvel was a standalone comic publishing company. They were close to going bankrupt. So what did they do in order to make more money? They licensed out some of their properties to different movie studios. Universal has the Hulk. That's why the Hulk movie is not on Disney Plus, the one from 2008. I wish it was. It's actually a fairly decent movie. It fits in with the MCU. It has a cameo from Robert Downey Jr. for crying out loud at the end. So maybe Sony can work out something with Universal to, at least put that one movie on there. Sony has Spider-Man and all of that universe that goes with it. So if it's in a Spider-Man comic, and they acquired other stuff too, like Morbius, that is in Sony's pocket. Sony has the right to distribute and make those movies. They own the rights to those characters as far as movies go. Fox, when Fox was still around, Fox acquired the X-Men and the Fantastic Four. So that's why, up until the Fox buyout, we did not see X-Men in the MCU. That's why we got all those other X-Men movies like, X-Men 1, 2, and 3, Days of Futures Past, Apocalypse, and so on. Actually, I just watched The New Mutants again the other night, and it's actually a fairly decent movie. I liked it. Anna Taylor-Joy, along with Maisie Williams, just steal the show. So, Spider-Man is not on Disney Plus because of Sony. Sony acquired the rights to Spider-Man. They have the rights to distribute those and make those movies how they see fit. Now they've struck a deal with Disney to say, hey, okay, you can have this character back and put him in your movies, but we're going to own the distribution rights to those movies. We're going to say where they can and cannot be seen. So that's why they've been off Disney Plus. So Disney, this coming from Variety, yesterday, on April 21st, Disney and Sony set massive movie deal bringing Spider-Man films to Disney Plus. And the article reads here, Disney has set a massive movie licensing pact with Sony Pictures for the U.S. that promises to bring Spider-Man and other Marvel properties to Disney Plus, starting with Sony's 2022 release slate. So you're going to have to wait now until 2022. The wide-ranging deal runs through Sony's 2026 theatrical slate, also calls for Sony titles to run across Disney's array of streaming and linear platforms, making it unprecedented in scope as it covers Disney+, Hulu, FX Networks, ABC, Disney Channels, and Freeform. It also includes a significant number of library titles that will be spread amongst the various outlets. Hulu will gain access to what Disney described as a significant number of library titles starting in June. So that's Hulu. The agreement comes on the heels of Sony's output deal with Netflix for titles in the lucrative post-theatrical release pay one window, which is about 1 year. The Disney deal covers subsequent TV windows, meaning that the titles will land on Netflix first. About 9 months after the start of the film's theatrical run, Disney is scooping up from multiple platforms. So 9 months. 9 months. So it would assume to me the first two Spider-Man movies automatically fall into that category. So 9 months after, so you might as well say about a year after Far From Home, so in December, it'll be the following December before No Way Home is on Disney Plus, and that you can stream those movies in order. You can, and I like the idea of being able to run the timeline and sit down in a day or two and stream those movies and watch them in order. So you get 9 months after the Disney is scooping up for multiple platforms the windows previously reserved for ad-supported cable and broadcast movie rights. The Netflix and Disney deals also run for the same licensing term. Like the Netflix deal, the Disney Pact only covers the U.S. market despite the outreach from the global streamers. The complex agreement is likely to be worth hundreds of millions of dollars to Sony over the term of the deal, which runs for about 6 years in total, given the lag time for Disney getting access to the movies. With Netflix and Disney combined, Sony is expected to rake in about $3 billion in movie licensing over the life of the deals. The complex deals were wrangled by Chuck Schaeffer, Schaeffler, head of business operations for ABC, Freeform, FX Networks, and acquisitions for Disney Media and Entertainment Distribution, and Keith Lee Goy, president of worldwide distribution and networks for Sony Pictures Entertainment. The deal marks another example of the entertainment industry rewriting its business models to adjust to a new era of TV exhibition and distribution. And then it goes on here to have a couple quotes from people. So Disney Plus, we're going to have to wait a few more months. There's no reason to not to put Far From Home and No Way Home and Homecoming and Far From Home are not on Netflix right now. I don't think they are. Let me look here. Let me look here. I don't think they are. All right, let me check here. I'm trying to think. I think the only thing that's Spider-Man related that is on Disney Plus right now is a cartoon series. No, I don't want to watch The Last Dance. Sorry. As that plays in my ear. Really? Really, Netflix? Really? Let's search for Spider-Man and see what's on here. Nothing. There's Lego Spider-Man, Lego stuff. That's it. That's the only thing. So, the two Spider-Man movies right now, I think, are streaming on Starz or Showtime, one of the two. But there's no reason why those two movies can't be on Disney Plus right now. Speaking of Disney Plus, let's move on to Emilia Clarke. Emilia Clarke was announced a couple days ago for signing with Disney Plus. They reached a deal for the Secret Invasion TV series. Why this is not a full-fledged film, I don't know. So they basically have reached a deal. We don't know the character she's going to be playing. We don't know if she's going to be a human. We don't know if she's going to be a Skrull. But it's nice to see Emilia Clarke in there. I like Emilia Clarke. She did really good in Game of Thrones. It wasn't her fault that the last few seasons that they totally screwed the pooch on it. But just I'm excited to see where Secret Invasion goes. We have seen the Skrulls on Disney Plus at the end of WandaVision. They're there. So that's not coming until probably next year or the year after as far as Secret Invasion goes. But I'm excited to see Emilia Clarke. Let me know what you think about this and all these topics here in the comments below. And please don't forget to hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. Who do you think Emilia Clarke's going to be playing? PlayStation. Speaking of Sony, we're going right back into the Sony deal. This is coming from pushsquared.com. And I will link you to this in the description, as well as that Variety article about the Sony deal. PlayStation Plus Video Pass expands PS Plus with movies and TV shows, but only in Poland for now. This is by Robert Ramsey over at Push Square. This was just released about 13 minutes ago as of this recording. They have a picture here. It's written in Polish or whatever. I think is Polish a language or whatever. It's basically like a video pass, and it shows Bloodshot, Zombieland, Double Tap, and Venom. And it says, with PlayStation Plus. It says, after something called PlayStation Plus Video Pass was leaked yesterday, Sony has confirmed to Polish website Spider's Web that the service expansion is real. However, for the time being, it's only tested in Poland. What's the deal here? Well, starting today, PlayStation Plus Video Pass allows PS Plus subscribers to access over 20 movies and TV shows from Sony Pictures, with the new video content being added every 3 months. That's in addition to the PS Plus benefits of online play and free games and exclusive store discounts. In other words, Sony is looking at how it can improve its PS Plus offering. Why is it only being offered in Poland? Well, according to Sony Global Services President Nick McGuire, it's because PlayStation's Polish audience fits the bill in terms of usage data. McGuire explains, we know very well that we have a large base of players in Poland who stand out due to their commitment and activity in the network and social media. They also like to use VOD platforms, video on demand platforms. For us, this is the perfect combination, the perfect market to introduce a test service as part of the PS Plus program and see what our key users think about it. Of course, I cannot share the exact data on the basis of why we chose Poland. However, I can emphasize that Poland meets all the criteria that are important to us. To your country is a mixture of very important factors from this perspective, he concludes, or continues. It's an interesting approach, and the fact that it's being tested in one region suggests that it's not quite sure whether PS Plus Video Pass is capable of a success on a global level. I would like to add one thing, that this comes on the tails, and this is not part of the article, but I find it funny that they're doing this in Poland, and they're looking to expand their VOD. This comes on the heels of them they're going to stop selling movies and music. So they're going to stop the videos, they're going to stop movies, they're going to stop music, they're going to stop all this on PlayStation, and this may be them making up for that. You may not be able to go online and purchase movies, but you'll get 3 movies. You know, they have them in their catalog. There's no reason why not to do it, and it's obvious that it wasn't making them any money selling them. So we'll just stream them for free. We'll make it part of your PS Plus package. And after 3 months, if it dumps off the service and you still want to keep that movie, then you can go buy it on video on demand somewhere. Once again, though, I do find it kind of crazy that this whole streaming war thing, man. This whole streaming war thing, it's not going to be as good as everybody says it is when it comes, because look at the cable companies. In my area, starting next year, Comcast, Xfinity, is going to start capping my data at 2 terabytes a month. For every gig that I go over, or every 10 gigs that I go over, $15. I could get an unlimited plan for an additional $30 a month. I said this since I started working at Comcast many years ago. It's been about 5 or 6 years ago, but I've been saying it on this channel off and on. The cable companies are going to start getting like the cell phone companies, and that they are going to start charging you for data. Even on my set-top box, even if I go on my Xfinity cable box and I look up I got apps on there. If it has the word internet next to it, it's consuming data. These streaming wars, these cable companies are going to, especially NBC Universal, who is owned by Comcast. They're going to shoot themselves in the foot when they start capping data and really try to start bleeding people dry. People are going to stop streaming movies once they realize how much, let me see here. Let me look here. Let's look here. Watching movies or TV show on Netflix uses about 1 gigabyte of data per hour for each stream of a standard definition video, and up to 3 gigs per hour for each stream of HD videos. An Ultra 4K streams about 7 gigs per hour. You'll use around 2 gigabytes to stream a 2-hour standard. Yeah, this is according to allconnect.com. And this is put out on March of 2020. Some internet providers limit monthly data usage, and some throttle speeds when you surpass that limit. How much does it cost for how much data does Netflix use for streaming? According to Netflix, you use 1 gigabyte of data per hour when you stream a standard definition video. HD videos use 3 gigs per hour. 4K Ultra HD 7 gigs per hour. This means you'll use around 2 gigabytes to stream a 2-hour SD movie, 6 to stream a HD version, or 14 for the 4K. A half-hour TV show would be 500 megabytes for the SD version, 1.5 gigs for the HD, and 3.5 gigs for 4K. If you've downloaded the videos to stream while offline, those streams don't use any data whatsoever. However, you're still downloading something. How much data? You don't need to use any data to stream or watch downloaded videos. You do need data to download them in the first place. Downloading and streaming consume a similar amount of data. It's coming, folks. I'm telling you right now, if it hasn't already happened to you, people in Georgia and Atlanta, they're capped. I drive 3 hours east or west of me here in Virginia over to the Galax region. They're capped. Don't let this streaming stuff fool you. The cable companies are still going to make, and the television companies are still going to make their money. NBC Universal is owned by Comcast. They're going to get your money one way or another. I've been saying it for years. This whole thing about a streaming war and cutting the cord, this is the cable company's way of getting, the ISP's way of getting back at you for cutting the cord. AT&T is probably going to start doing it soon too. Don't be fooled. They're going to get your money one way or another, folks. Gran Turismo, I got the Olympic logo up there. Why do I got the Olympic logo with a video game controller hanging out of it? This is according to PushSquare.com. Gran Turismo is set to become a bona fide Olympic sport as it's been selected as one of the 5 official partners of the inaugural Olympic Virtual Series, which is slated to take place from May 13th through June 23rd. That's prior to the delayed Tokyo Olympics, which is scheduled to start in July. This will mark the first ever Olympic event for esports. There will be 5 games featured as part in total, each of which is aligned with an international sports federation to add authenticity. In the case of Gran Turismo, it's the FIA, or Federation Internacional del Automobile, given it to give its full title. Fascinatingly, this is the first time a motorsport has been recognized at the Olympics, and I've often wondered why motorsports are never authorized. Motorsports should be an Olympic sport. So far, here's the full lineup. For baseball, you got the World Softball Confederation, or the WBSC, and they're using eBaseball Powerful Pro Baseball 2020, which is by Konami. Cycling is using Union Cycliste Internationale, or UCI, and that's with Zwift. Not to be confused with Swift. It's Zwift. For motorsports, you got the Federation Internationale des Automobiles, or the FIA, which is using Gran Turismo, which is made by Polyphony Digital. For rowing, you have World Rowing is the federation, and what game they're using is TBA, to be announced. For sailing, they even have sailing, virtual sailing. You can go World Sailing, and that's through Virtual Regatta, which is made by Virtual Regatta. Details on how to qualify will be announced at a later date, but the International Olympic Committee states that each event will run through respective publishers' established platforms. This means presumably that the contest will appear within Gran Turismo Sports' flagship sport mode when it unfurls next month. So if you got what it takes to be an Olympian, go ahead and test your might. And that's all the news for entertainment and video games right here that I have for you. Of course, there's a lot more out there, but I will link the Variety article about the Sony deal and the other 2 articles that I did from PlayStation, from Push Square, down in the description. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, we got an interview with Lavie Margolin, and Lavie is going to talk a little bit about the business of pro wrestling. He has a wonderful podcast that I will also link to down below, called The Business of the Business, in which he basically takes the ins and outs of the industry as far as ratings and gates and money. We're gonna be taking care of business when we come back. You're listening to From Pillar to Post. We're taking you from pillar to post. God, we're covering a lot today. We'll be right back.
We'll return after these messages.
Heavy rain is slowing traffic.
What time's your meeting?
8:30.
Oh, great. I have to be there by 8.
Didn't do that.
Sitter isn't here yet.
You ready for more good news?
What now?
Kevin's diaper leaked. Everything's soaked.
Not today.
If you could buy a thin diaper that dramatically cut leakage, even overnight, wouldn't you try it? This is it. New Love's Deluxe. Now with the Night Guard system. No diaper has ever worked like this. If baby only wet once during the night, almost any thin diaper would do. But only Love's new Night Guard system quickly distributes wetness throughout the padding. So when baby wets again, other diapers can leak, but Love's can still absorb without leaking.
We better roll.
Everything's in good shape today.
Oh, is that that new diaper?
Now it's our only diaper.
Those things really work, don't they?
They really work.
Mommy, why did I get a cavity? Why?
Parents have to answer enough tough questions, so do all you can to prevent that one. Make sure you give your kids Crest. You see, Crest has Fluorostat. It's a unique formula, and no other toothpaste has ever done a test to prove it's better than Crest at fighting cavities. Crest, the dentist's choice for their patients, should be your choice for your children.
I hope I don't get a cavity next time.
I gotta take a break. I wanna play in the rain and take a break. 7-Up so cool and clear. Yeah, it feels as good as the rain that's out here. Gotta take a break. 7-Up. I wanna play in the rain and take a break. It's so good coming down.
Now you could win a year's worth of free travel on United Airlines, plus $25,000. Look for the 7-Up Play All Day game.
7-Up.
Now back to our story.
If dinner gets a little too attached to your grill, reach for the ultimate cleaning machine, SOS. Nothing cuts the dirt on grills, white walls, or golf clubs faster. SOS, the ultimate cleaning machine.
You'll get it. Do it one more time.
I got it! Fever!
We got it too.
Fever?
We got the fever for the flavor of a Pringles. Fever.
It's that deep-fried taste! Fever! It's that crispy crunch!
Fever. Wow, now I've got it. Fever. We got the fever for the flavor of a Pringles. Fever. Fever.
I'm sending the Edwards a card to thank them for the dinner and to thank Elizabeth for loaning me a dress. After you spilled wine on me, and her tablecloth, and her rug, and her poodle, Snowflake. And to promise her that you won't try any more magic tricks in their house. Please forgive us, Elaine and Abracadabra.
A night to remember deserves a card from Hallmark, the place to go when you care enough to send the very best.
Why are so many people drinking Diet Coke and seeing Steve Martin and Daryl Hannah's new movie, Roxanne? It's as plain as the nose on your face.
Just for the fun of it. Just for the smile of it. Diet Coke. Just for the cool of it. The love of it. The taste of it. Diet Coke. Just for the style of it. Diet Coke. The number one of it. Just for the fun of it. Roxanne and Diet Coke.
A double pleasure's waiting for you. A double pleasure from Double Mint Gum. A double great feeling, making you realize Double Mint's the one for you. Double fresh, double smooth, double delicious to chew. A double pleasure is waiting for you. Double Mint Gum. A double pleasure is waiting for you. Double Mint Gum.
Carnation Instant Breakfast. You're gonna love it in an instant. You're gonna love it in an instant. So good and frosty, rich and tasty. Carnation Instant Breakfast. You're gonna love it in an instant.
You'll also love that Carnation Instant Breakfast is now even easier to make with this free shaker mug. See specially marked boxes for mail-in offer details.
Carnation Instant Breakfast. In regular and no sugar added. You're gonna love it in an instant.
My roommate said, "Gee, Shelley, your skin looks really good. It couldn't be because of Dove." I said, "Jen, it must be."
We asked women to give up their soap and use Dove for 7 days.
I had some dry spots right here. After using Dove for 7 days, they're gone.
Dove contains 1/4 moisturizing cream. Its non-soap formula won't dry your face like soap.
Everybody wants to look touchable. With Dove, my skin feels wonderful.
City News, Mr. Keebler. Can you tell us what your new sandwich cookies look like? No comment. Well, we hear they've got creamy fillings. No comment.
Keebler introduces new EL Fudge sandwich cookies. Buttery cookies with creamy fudge. Chocolatey cookies with peanut butter middles. And chocolatey cookies with vanilla cream.
We hear they're all delicious.
They are? Oh, were you talking to the cookie?
The cookie? No comment.
New EL Fudge sandwich cookies from Keebler.
It's a battle between two of the top teams in the American League as Minnesota takes on the New York Yankees. Or the Los Angeles Dodgers meet St. Louis on ABC's Monday Night Baseball.
First time I saw him, he was a dirty-faced little kid wearing a baseball cap. I watched him play baseball in American Legion and all the way through high school. I called the front office and I said, this kid can really hit. Sign him. He's going to be an all-star. Kid's name was George Brett. I've just seen something else. And let me tell you, don't buy another car until you've seen a Sterling.
Hour hand, minute hand, second hand, sweet. Time is of the essence, gotta pick it up a beat. Because time is money and money is time. The one that does it faster is the one that we buy. High gear, full tilt, gotta get it done. Quick, 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 bite fast food, eat it on the run. Rush job, turnaround, speed is now the key. Tell them that you want it ASAP. Get it in an instant, punch and run. Out 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
We live in an instant world. Why not make an instant fortune? Play Fortune Instant Lottery. You could win a quick million.
Good morning. Burger King presents Breakfast to Go. Yeah, to go. Crust sandwich. To go. French toast sticks. To go. Breakfast to go. Burger King, the best food for fast times.
Mike Jackson and Diane Burns tonight at 10.
The Wind in the Willows now continues. We'll return after these messages.
Wow. All this work's making me really hungry.
McDonald's introduces Super Summer Sizes.
Laughs around the pool make me so thirsty.
Larger-than-large mega servings of icy Coca-Cola, golden fries, and thick milkshakes, but for a limited time only. So drive through today.
Serve it up summertime at McDonald's. Milk kick. Kick. Everybody knows how to do that kick. Help kick. Pour a glass of milk real tall, getting proteins and vitamins and loving it all. Kick, 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 kick. Milk kick. Kick. Come on, everybody, do that kick. America's favorite health kick. Milk.
Bill Cosby on Great Film Developing.
This is my dog. We lost Best of Show at a big dog show. It was a sad night. He was very upset. I took some pictures, remember? Huh? Well, now, you don't think I'd take them just anywhere to be developed. Here, come on, look at them.
Ask for the Kodak Color Watch system. This Color Watch seal says only Kodak products are used for great developing.
He's still upset. I show him the pictures. He says, Arf, Color Watch, you're going to thank me for it.
This is a Cajun Spice Ruffles tater chip. Now, some people might think it's too hot. No, it's not too hot. It's spicy, yeah. Now it's hot, I'll guarantee.
Cajun Spice Ruffles Bread Potato Chips.
Mama thinks it's special. How do I know? 'Cause my Skippy tells me so.
Of all the national brands, only Skippy has both high protein and less sugar.
Glad my mama put Skippy in Ireland.
Skippy for good nutrition.
No doubt about it. There's something going on. No other feeling even holds a candle.
Hey out there, Dad. I love you.
It's like a seed has sprouted, like spring has come us from.
Awesome!
Clear shot
back, ladies and gentlemen, to From Pillar to Post. Joining me right now, as you can see on your screen and by the title of the video here on YouTube, we have with us a very good friend of the show. He was on with us back in December, and he's such a dang good guest that I had to invite him on every so often to talk business. And speaking of the business, he is the co-host of the Business podcast over there at the Creative Control Network. They just moved to the Creative Control Network not too long ago. Welcome back, friend of the show, Lavie Margolin. Lavie, how are you doing, sir?
Hey, it's great to be back. Thankfully, everything is going okay. How are you?
I'm doing good, sir. How's everything going up in New York, man? I wonder about you guys because New York is actually, well, upstate New York is actually where I caught COVID at back in January. So I worry about you guys. How's everything going up there?
Appreciate it. Thankfully, around here, everything is going okay. I'm in a suburb of the city, a little bit outside Manhattan, and things are functioning. When the weather is good, kids are out in the playground. We went down to Manhattan this weekend, had a good time with some relatives, and life goes on.
It's funny. I went to Long Island, and keep in mind I'm driving a big rig, and I had a delivery to do on Long Island at the first part of December, and I realized real quickly when I saw about it was two or three Lamborghini dealerships in a matter of about 15 miles. You got to have a little money to live out there. And it's funny because Long Island didn't give me COVID, and it's right there in the city. I'm driving through Queens, I'm driving through the Bronx, everything like that. It was actually upstate New York, Watkins Glen, that gave me COVID. So I was very shocked to learn that you could get it everywhere up there.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I'm sorry to hear that that you caught it, but it's one of those things that you never know, where it's coming from, and hopefully it'll be behind us sometime soon.
Yep. I hope so too. I have not gotten the vaccination yet because I sit here and go, what's the point? I've already had it. I got the antibodies in me. But people are getting vaccinated. It's a good thing that people are getting vaccinated. Yes, your arm's going to hurt from the vaccination. Stay away from the Johnson & Johnson one. You'll be okay. But in the last 21 weeks, I believe it's been 20 weeks, you started a podcast along with the two-man co-host, the co-host of the two-man power trip, John Pose. What was the inspiration behind you guys starting the podcast? Who came up with the idea of it? Take us through that whole process, if you will.
Sure. No, it's an interesting story. Of course, I connected with John probably around the same time I connected with you when my first version of Trump Mania came out. Kind of wanted to get the word out, get publicity, talk to people in the podcasting and streaming community. So went on John's podcast, the Two-Man Power Trip. We had a great conversation, kind of, stayed in touch informally, especially over Twitter. And in the meanwhile, I had actually signed a deal with Hollywood to produce Trump Mania into a podcast.
Yeah, I remember that.
If you Google it, you can see it's even in like some of those trade magazines. So it was a very long process, and that podcast was about to come out, and then it ran into some complications. It was dropped, and I was like, well, there's too much here. I worked so hard on this. Maybe I can revive this and work with somebody else. So I was thinking about, who might I be able to work with, and reached out to a couple of people, and John right away was like, yeah, let's do this. So we ended up doing Trump Mania. It was a planned 11 weeks. We ended up doing 12 with a special guest. And that went really well. And then I pitched to John, I was like, I've always had this idea for doing a business-specific podcast, especially non-WWE, or at least not focusing on what everyone else does in wrestling news. Whether it's Dave Meltzer, who obviously does a great job, but everyone sort of copies him or focuses on the same thing, which is the ratings, pay-per-view buy rates, network subscriptions. But let's look at the independent scene, or let's look at international, or let's talk about live events or Ring of Honor, and just find stories. So we had maybe a week or two break between podcasts, and then we were off and running. And if you follow John at the Two-Man Power Trip, he's like, he puts Conrad to shame in terms of the number of podcasts that he does with so many different guests, different co-hosts like Justin Credible, Shane Douglas, Dr. Tom Pritchard, all those sort of things. So we started out through his feed through the first 18 episodes, and then now we're under the Creative Control Network banner, the last few.
So I got to ask about that, because I'm sitting here listening to a few episodes on the Two-Man Power Trip Network. Why did you guys decide to jump networks? It just seems to me John is co-owner or owner, I'm not sure if he's co-owner, of that network. Why did you guys choose to jump to Creative Control?
No, that's a great question. John's been doing this a while, so I sort of follow his lead with that. So we were sort of like with the Two-Man feed, sort of if you subscribe to the original podcast or some of those other programs, like the program that he does with Dr. Tom Pritchard, you would start getting our podcast. But, there was the opportunity to work with Creative Control Network, which has podcast with Hurricane Helms, Francine, a number of talents there to sort of expand. So then I figured, in the way I thought of it, we not only have John's network, but we have the Creative Control Network, and kind of expand out from there. And it seemed, as soon as we dropped the first episode, that there was, more buzz, and it was sort of capturing the attention of an even wider audience than we had before.
You guys remind me so much of two podcasts kind of jammed together. The one podcast is Wrestlenomics, where they kind of talk about the stocks and the subscriptions and everything like that, the Wall Street aspect of the business. And then you also, there was a podcast, I don't even know if this podcast still exists. It was called the Talking Sheet Podcast. And the hosts of that show would go through Meltzer and Mike Johnson, Dave Scher. They would go through their audio shows and kind of, I guess, analyze them and come up with, hey, what were these guys thinking when they reported this? You guys remind me of such like a mesh if those two podcasts got together and had a baby. It's the business of the business. I love the way it's structured. Guys, if you want to go over, just search for Creative Control and Podcast Network. I found their Spreaker page. Yes, even if you download the episode, you're going to hear ads. It happens. Spreaker has to make money somehow, but I highly suggest downloading it, listening to it, subscribing to it on that. Do people still use RSS feeds anymore? I don't know. But I have a number of topics I want to jump in here and talk to you about. While you were recording your last episode, which I had to tell Lavie it actually dropped today. He's like, it's going to drop Friday. I'm like, it's already up. And I listened to it. It's great. The MLW TV deal dropped right in the middle of when you were interviewing somebody. And today we found out New Japan Pro Wrestling was offered this deal by VICE, and they turned it down. And you wrote on your Twitter today, I believe it was like, what the hell was New Japan thinking? I got to agree with you, man. Is it they went to the Roku channel. I mean, what can you try to, because you know the business a little bit more than, the insides of what the corporate aspect of it is. Why do you think New Japan turned this down?
No, it's a great question because, New Japan and Access TV during New Japan's run on their station, it seemed to be like the perfect marriage because Access had never really had a hit. They had, some MMA and they had some country music and Dan Rather, but there was nothing that really broke through. And when New Japan was on that station, it really created buzz, and that was one of the few stations that was actually growing in subscribers. And I attributed that partly to New Japan, just because people wanted to see it, especially before AEW was on the scene. It was sort of like the secondary alternative brand, and since New Japan is no longer on the station, they've sort of been floundering in terms of gaining a foothold in the U.S. So there had been talk that Access had offered them the opportunity to return, but they turned that down. And there was the hint that they said, we'll see you on TV soon in the US and the UK, and they had a purple logo. So we were all like guessing, like, okay, what stations have purple logos? And people were like, well, I kind of sort of fell for all of them. I was like HBO Max, and then it ended up being Roku, and you're like, okay, that's not like, I do believe much more in streaming than I had a couple years ago. It's such a big thing now, but it's not a TV network. And to hear that they didn't take a deal with Vice, which has been doing great with Darkside, it really, at least from an exposure perspective, it makes you question things about the way they're doing things. Now, as somebody commented, you don't know the deal, which is correct. Like maybe it's, oftentimes when you hear about wrestling on stations, you assume, that the wrestling company is doing well. And then often you hear about that it's not such a great deal. If it's a modest revenue sharing deal, or it's just they're giving them the airtime, but the station keeps the ads. But whatever the deal is with MLW, with New Japan, if they were going to provide content from shows that they're already recording, or TV Asahi is in Japan, and you would just need commentators, then that exposure would be worth it in itself. So I don't know what they're holding out for, but I think it's a real missed opportunity, and I think it's a great opportunity for MLW. It really, be in sports and be in sports Espanol. Their exposure. They had been losing so many stations, cable company coverage over the last few years. They were only on in 16 million homes out of 100 million potential homes. So those stations, we don't know what MLW is doing. I would assume that it was the highest rated shows when soccer wasn't on. But those stations average between 5,000 and 9,000 viewers in prime time, and Vice, averages 75,000 viewers, and the Dark Side shows have been doing over 100,000 viewers. So I think this is a big step up for them, and they still get to keep being.
Now, Vice is I believe they started off as a very popular YouTube channel. They still hold a really strong footprint. In fact, they've acquired other YouTube channels such as Munchies and other things like that. It makes me wonder, because the Dark Side of the Ring, they're the ones ordering more episodes. They're the ones pumping the money into this. Do we know if MLW is getting any money, any kind of rights fee or anything from Vice, or has that still not been made clear yet?
Yeah, nothing has come out there yet, so that'll be curious to see what they do. I mean, if we start seeing that MLW is producing shows specifically for Vice, the tapings aren't linked and they're taping regularly, I don't think that they're in the position to sort of self-fund tapings just to increase their visibility or merchandising or when there's live events. So, I'd have to assume that it's a cash positive deal for them. It was clear from the beginning with beIN Sports that they were getting a rights fee, and a company of that size at the time, that was a rare thing. And they do have representation from an agency that I don't think would do a deal, that would be very modest. So I'm going to assume that it is a rights fee deal, whatever those rights are.
Yeah, they're not going to do anything that's going to cost them money. They want to make money, and they have to. One would think that they have to start taping on a regular basis because it's 52 weeks a year. It's wrestling. You could run best of shows around the holidays, maybe once a month do a best of show, or do something like Ring of Honor does the week after a pay-per-view where they're not able to do the production on what's taped so quickly. So they run like a best of or something like that isn't canon or continuity-wise. My thing is they do a good job of producing Dark Side. Well, whoever, the guys who do Dark Side of the Ring, they have a really good way of using that money for as far as the production aspect goes and producing. So it makes me wonder if MLW is going to jump up and step up with their production as far as sets, as far as their rings, their overall look of the show goes. It's going to be very interesting to see. Now, they are showing some old stuff at first. I heard you guys mention that maybe they're going to start showing like CM Punk stuff, maybe some MJF stuff, because MJF folks used to be there. That's pretty much where MJF got his start, in my opinion, was MLW. Do you think that is to allow them to tape some things, start fresh, and implement that new production value?
Yeah, from what I was reading, it seems like they certainly prefer to have a show with fans in attendance when they drop the first one. And since they are going to premiere soon on the network, or at least have these specials as a lead into Dark Side of the Ring, that would be a quick turnaround. So they'll start with some of these best of shows, which sort of fills content needs. I don't see it as a great strategy for sort of like introducing people to the promotion, because those type of specials tend to be low rated, and once they do their first show, you'll get a decent rating for people to check it out. So I don't think you need to introduce people to it so much. I would rather get started right away, but it makes sense, especially in the current conditions, and you need time to prepare for a show like that.
Do you think the reason why New Japan did not sign this deal, and I was sitting here listening to you guys, and I'm typing up my notes for this interview, and I'm thinking, VICE wants first-run programming. Yes, they play a lot of reruns. Like when they do like the pizza show, that's stuff taken from the YouTube channel, and they edit it to have commercials thrown in there. But they like first-run programming as well. We've seen that with Dark Side of the Ring. To me, Dark Side of the Ring Confidential is first run because you get that added content. New Japan Pro Wrestling debuts on Roku, and they're a year behind in their work and in their content. And it doesn't seem like MLW is going to go with these best of shows for very long. And we saw this with when excuse me, I can't talk today. My mouth is falling down the stairs. When New Japan debuted on Access, they were always about a month or two behind, if not a year behind when they first started. Do you think that's New Japan's fault? Is why, clearly they turned down the deal. But do you think that's why they turned down the deal? Is because VICE wants them to be current and wants them to basically give them what, New Japan Strong is on new NJPW World. They're making money off that. They probably wouldn't make as much money as if it was on VICE and it's current in America. Do you think that's why New Japan refused this deal? Is that a contributing factor, you think?
I think that, it makes sense that, like, New Japan, of course, their revenue stream is Japan, of course, and, everything is Japanese-centric, and, the logistics of the way that they work and the way that they run are very different. One of the key things being that they don't produce their own programming or own the rights to the footage. It goes through TV Asahi. and then we used to hear about Access having to work out a deal with them, and then a separate deal with New Japan. So sort of like everyone can work together, and one of those things may be not a rush necessarily to produce content for this market that's of a high level. I think the mass tapings in California through Dave Marquez and the Championship Wrestling from Hollywood crew, that's one thing on like a streaming service. It's for a very niche market, but to produce something on a high level for American television is a different story.
It just occurred to me here, Samoa Joe and a lot of, now obviously you don't want to debut with having a bunch of WWE, ex-WWE guys, but it would be hell of a get if MLW were to get Samoa Joe, and their first show is Samoa Joe debuting in MLW on their new TV show. I don't think it's going to happen, but they're clearly going to need to make stars and push the stars that they already have, like an Alexander Hammerstone, and it's going to be curious to see where they go from here. Let's talk about. I got so many things here. Let's go to Ring of Honor. Do they need a better TV deal than what they have? It's been pandered about for almost a couple years now. That yes, even though they're owned by Sinclair. Yes, Sinclair could put them on their stations like Stadium and all that for free. Do you think that they need to do kind of what MLW is doing? Because MLW is staying on beIN Sports. They're going to stay on YouTube. Now they got Vice. Do you think that Ring of Honor needs to go that route and kind of go a little bit less syndicated, a little bit more national? On a national television station?
I guess it depends on what a person would feel they need to do. So I think when the iron was hot and they were sort of the stand-in for AEW, you could say it was New Japan was the alternative, which I already did, I guess, a few minutes ago, or Ring of Honor, depending on what you thought is what was the secondary brand 3 years ago, although it feels like a lifetime ago, when you had the Young Bucks and Cody Rhodes, and they could do a big house WrestleMania weekend and over a full year average several thousand fans, break the records year over year, which I was tracking, not on a gigantic high level, but for them doing really well. It sort of seemed like, okay, if you could get a national deal, you could really break out here. When Sinclair was looking at buying the Tribune assets and WGN was a well-distributed network, our minds would go to, okay, 2 hours in prime time on WGN. This is it. You have Cody Rhodes and the Bucks and Briscoes and whoever else. This could really break out. Now they're, several rungs lower. The pandemic has been good for nobody, but in terms of where they were as a company, like it was so negative that the break actually had been good for them. And before the pandemic, I was thinking maybe they should just put a stop to things for 4 months. They have so much content, run best of shows, remind people what they used to be, and start fresh. And I think that given the circumstances, they've done really well with that, like with people like Jonathan Gresham, and kind of going pure tournament and sort of focusing on the athleticism. For where they are, they're doing the best they can. I think, like, at the end of the day, Sinclair doesn't play well with others. They acquire others, and they've gotten the RSNs that they're sort of rebranded under Bally's. They've taken on it's sort of like they're not shouldering the debt, because I think they've incorporated in a different way, if I'm understanding it correctly. But sort of buying these sports stations right when there was no sports hadn't been easy. But the way that they grow next, that Joe Koff is really focused on, is to program Ring of Honor at a certain time slot across a variety of their networks, and which is very difficult to do, right? Because you'll have constant sports interruptions and so on. But let's say they say Saturday nights, 11 p.m. everywhere in the country is Ring of Honor. It's a little bit easier to program off of that. But at the same time, the company has so many different pockets and so disorganized. Like if you go to Ring of Honor's website and you search a zip code where Ring of Honor doesn't run, it comes up and it says Charge TV 10 p.m. on Sundays. It hasn't been in that slot in at least several months. So like they're putting it on their materials, but nobody's checking even to know that it doesn't air there. So the model that I'm talking about, that they've alluded to, they're actually doing with one of their morning programs now. I mean Sinclair, they have a talk show in the morning where they run it on their WB affiliates and so on, where it's like it's national programming, as much of their national footprint, running it at the same time across a variety of their networks. So I think that's their growth. I think outside of something unexpected, that they won't have programming that's not through Sinclair.
I have a ABC affiliate that's run by Sinclair here, and they show AEW 2 times. They will show it late Saturday night, and then they will show it on Sunday mornings. So I get the replay of it, but like you said, they need to nail down something where, hey, that way they can run they could put together an ad package or a stinger, if you will, that says, hey, Ring of Honor, 11 o'clock, right here, But no, each station has to go through and cement their own ad saying, hey, we air it at 10 o'clock. No, we air it at 2 a.m. And then, it's almost as if they still treat it as that paid programming, style, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it's definitely treated like filler programming, across the board, but, it's decent filler programming in that it, seemingly doesn't cost them a lot. The local stations benefit from it. And although they haven't revealed many details about their overall ratings, and some question if they even have all of the ratings, Joe Koff recently talked about that they average between 300 and 500,000 per show across the spectrum, which, makes sense. And in 2015, there was an article that talked about a Nielsen estimate being about 500,000 viewers a week, which I think if we're working 300 to 500,000, that makes sense to me, especially, like you mentioned on ABC, on an ABC affiliate, for example. So if it runs after the news or after a popular high school football game, people are there. They might just watch because it's on, and they could sell some ads based on that.
I wonder how they're keeping track of that when, like you said, it's not on at a constant time across all their stations. It's 11 o'clock here. Are they including the replays in that? Are they including the stadium replays in that? How do you think they came up with that number?
So I actually read an interesting book about media selling. So if it's in a Nielsen rated market on a Nielsen station, so putting aside the diginets like a stadium, which we can talk about in a moment, that those, like, if they subscribe to Nielsen provides a report and says that, for every time slot, and so on, you did this rating and so on. So across, I think they're in 87 markets, and Sinclair owns 400 something stations, which includes like the digital nets. You can sort of, if you have the computer programming, you can, and you can tag Ring of Honor, there's a way to add that up. Whether they do that or not, I'm not sure. But that's one way. Or you could sort of estimate it. Let's say you're looking at 10 or 15 markets where you do have the solid ratings, and then you extrapolate it from there. But you're right, like with a stadium, unless it's getting ratings points, which is hard for a digital network because sometimes the viewership is so low that they do estimates, unless it's a top digital station, they do estimates throughout the day. They might say that in total, in aggregate, they averaged 80,000 people for the day. So some of those numbers are unknown. And then also you can start thinking about some of the digital distribution. If you want to count that, they have their streaming platforms now on their own Stir, and they've distributed it on one more station. So there's there's different ways that are out there, but I take that 300 to 500,000 number. I think that's a solid ballpark to work from.
I want to ask you about the Nielsen ratings, and because you mentioned they have to subscribe to Nielsen, and you're obviously well educated on the subject more than I am. Back in the day, for people who don't know how they used to track who was watching what, you go online or you fill out this form online or in the mail, and they send you a diary along with a dollar bill, because they're technically, here's $1 for just filling out this diary. And nowadays it's an app. I think they pay you $10 to download the app, and you fill out this diary of, Susie was watching, here's how many people we have in the household, here's their ages, and then it goes day by day, hour by hour, who was watching what, on what channel, at what time. Nowadays, I think you can even break it up by rooms, because with the age of DVR and having multiple cable boxes, I could be watching one thing in my bedroom, my wife could be watching another thing in the living room, and my son could be watching something on the Xfinity app on his smart TV. Have they kind of gotten away from that? Do they have a way to contact the cable companies now, or do the cable companies readily have a way of tracking who's watching what? Because it just seemed like it was a lot of work and a lot more complicated before, when the cable companies can clearly say, yep, this household was watching, such and such at such and such time. Do you know how they still keep track of all that?
No, you're right. It would make sense, right, if it's coming through a digital network, that the cable companies should be able to track it and then sort of report back. But in terms of some controversy that's actually come out recently, it is more of the older way that you were describing it, in that Nielsen actually, as part of their process, they actually send people out into the field to check on the boxes that they have, and to talk to their families. And guess what? During COVID, they didn't go out there. So people are actually questioning over the last year to 15 months the validity of the ratings that they were providing. And advertisers may have a case to say that, we're paying these stations based on ratings points that you said that they were delivering, but by your own accounting, you weren't able to check on things. So my joke was that maybe NXT did win the ratings war against AEW. How are we going to know?
So I never knew that they did until like a few years ago. Do they still offer the set-top boxes that work with your cable company and track it that way, or is it still done by the diaries? Because it used to be back in the day, back in the 80s and early 90s, people used to brag about how they're a Nielsen family and they get tracked and all this. So do they still have actual boxes that work in conjunction with your cable company, or is it all done via apps?
I think there is, some form of box now, because the issue was that they couldn't just check remotely that the apps were working, but they actually wanted to check the boxes. I guess a certain percent fail from time to time, just to make sure that they're working. It's reminding me of that episode. I'm not sure if you watch the Young Rock show, where The Rock had a job in college where you had to check the college's emergency systems. If you pick up an emergency phone on campus, that it's still working. So, the joke was that no one ever checks them except that day. So he was running around with his friend to stay ahead of the inspector.
I have not seen Young Rock yet. I have no urge to watch it because I take one look at it and I go, okay, this is totally, satirical to what his real life was like. I mean, if I wanted to find out what Rock's life was like, I could easily go on there and read countless unauthorized biographies of it. But I guess it's entertaining. A lot of people have told me it is an entertaining show to watch. So I'm also curious as far as ratings go, how the DVR numbers are measured. The DVR is as long as you watch that show within 7 days, it gets counted. But my son does not have a cable box in his room. If he wants to watch live TV, he has the Xfinity app. When I was driving a truck for a living, if I wanted to watch a show, I could stream it on the Xfinity app. Do you know if those are counted? Like those live streams, are they counted at all?
It's a good question. I think that companies like Nielsen want to be able to capture things more. They know that they're missing things, and they do want to capture those more accurately. And some things definitely aren't. And it's interesting because you're right. Like there is that +7. You can get a rating that includes 7 days later. But often the advertisers, they only want to know +3. So if you're the type of promotion that it takes a while to build buzz and get the word out, you don't benefit as much as if it's a show where people want to watch it right away when you can still get credit for it, it's interesting. I think I've heard about this with podcasts. Like some people do really well with their archives, but they're only paid for advertisers that bought the program for a certain amount of time. So it counts in terms of your exposure, but if you're getting paid through advertising, you don't really benefit from that.
Yeah, Blue Chew isn't going to pay you off the archives. They're only going to pay you if somebody goes to and how I heard about it, like Blue Chew is the big one. Every damn podcast out there is sponsored by Blue Chew. I wouldn't be surprised if Blue Chew comes knocking on your door in the next couple of weeks. But how it works is they give you a link, bluechew.com/business for you. And if I go to bluechew.com/business and I order my Blue Chew through that link, you get a certain percentage of the purchase. At least that's how it works, I think. I don't think Blue Chew is paying, the Bruce Pritchard podcast or anybody else. I don't think they're paying them for the spot. Now, Conrad Thompson, as a shrewd businessman as he's rumored to be, he may be charging people for the spot. But I know that YouTubers, for example, NordVPN is a proper one. Raid Shadow Legends, the mobile video game, everybody's sponsored by that crap. And it's like they can't be going out there and paying advertising space for all these people. So it has to be we'll give you a certain percentage of the sales type of thing. You brought up the 7-day number and that they don't want to hear about it. But it would be interesting to hear if Meltzer and everybody else could report on it, because then that could kind of, especially during that Wednesday night war thing, advertisers don't like DVRs. They don't like them because you can fast forward the commercials. They'd rather you watch it on demand, because on demand the cable companies could force ads through there. And even then, that's an agreement between the advertisers and the cable companies, not necessarily the station. But do you think if we could see those 7-day numbers on a more regular basis, it would have put those Wednesdays into perspective and that the audience probably would have been a little bit more even?
Yeah, no, it's a good question because, right, once you have a few days later, if somebody, is a crossover fan, a lot of people just like wrestling, then, I think it's reasonable to assume that a lot of people went to watch one, watched one live or within a day or two, and then they sort of caught up on the second. I think each brand sort of has their own loyalties, but I think it would even out more. That I would agree with that.
Couple questions about AEW here. What is your stance on AEW right now as far as a booking perspective? Because you touched this on your show. I touched on it on my podcast. It's funny. I kind of feel like I was the first one to do a video of it. And I'm not a really well-known YouTube channel, so I'll say the video that I did on it where I played the audio from Meltzer actually ripping AEW a new one as far as their booking, and it was such a shock to me that it's like, okay, I got to analyze this for my channel and give my thoughts on it. Meltzer did. I did. Cornette then did a video about Meltzer criticizing it. Finally, maybe he's starting to see the light. What is your stance on their whole booking, the way they're booking these shows, and just their overall way that Tony Khan, just to me, does not get it 100%? At the end of the day, he's a money mark booking shows, in my opinion. But what's your stance on the way AEW has been handled over the recent months?
No, so right. So like just to contextualize things, I generally consider myself a lapsed fan who watches the business obviously super closely. So like I still watch a lot of wrestling, but it tends to be like going to YouTube and be like, okay, Bret Hart against 1-2-3 Kid, like, or Quebecers from 1993, like Wrestling Challenge. Like that's my happy place. So WWE, like modern WWE, like doesn't capture my interest at all unless like I hear that there's a really hot angle or a really interesting match, like let's say like Roman Reigns, like as he was building up momentum on SmackDown, a lot of people were talking about it and feuding with his cousin, so I wanted to see what was going on. AEW, especially when they had fans, and I mean now they do have a decent amount sort of making crowd noise, like I like the feel of it, meaning that like I record it, I DVR it, as we were talking about, and I watch it in about 35 to 40 minutes,
right?
And I'm generally happy with that. So that gives me the opportunity to fast forward anything that that I'm not interested in. But I think there's certainly flaws to it. One of the things is Tony Khan hyping up certain things that don't have a payoff, like Christian as the big surprise. Like, come on, like I mean nothing against the guy. I mean I liked Edge and Christian and all that sort of stuff, but he was the secondary person, and I know he was on TNA and their champion like back in the day, but like why should somebody believe you the next time? And so that sort of thing. So I think that and to me, like there's certain people that just are very unlikable, like not in a way like a heel, like Chris Jericho right like now, he's like unlikable, and like just the way he's, I mean at his age he's doing well, but like it's a little bit embarrassing now to see him like in the shape that he's in. I mean, he's in better shape than me, I'm sure, but like certain issues like that. But I do like, some of the young talent that they've brought on the scene, like, and forgive me if I'm sort of like messing up their names, like Max Cassidy, the guy that raps,
Max Cassidy
coming at, so he's always like about to say something terrible and they cut him off. A few of those young guys that have broken through, like those are really interesting to me. So while it does have its issues, I think it has a different feel than WWE, and it's good to have the alternative. And I'm certainly curious, as they popped a big rating unopposed, to see if that continues, if that grows, or sort of if that diminishes.
One of the things that Meltzer always brings up is the women, the female audience has not been there for AEW in the last month or so. And his contributing factor to this is blood. Females get turned off by blood. I don't buy that. I don't buy it at all, because more women, I mean, you look at the last Rambo movie that came out a couple years ago. Those movies could get pretty bloody, and a lot of women went to go see Rambo. more women went to go see Rambo, I think, than Captain Marvel. And Captain Marvel was a very SJW, I am woman, hear me roar kind of film. Do you think blood turns women away from wrestling? Is this a valid excuse?
I don't know if it's specifically blood, but I feel like if somebody, if they love wrestling, man or woman, they'll come back to it, like if it's their thing. But if it's sort of like borderline, like I'll watch it with my significant other or something, if it seems very lowbrow and blood could be one of those factors, then it would be a turnoff. Like for example, I like to watch on Amazon Prime USWA 1990, and there's a tag team. I mean, we all know of the Dirty White Boys, the single, but there was at the time the tag team, the Dirty White Boys, and my wife was sort of like, she wasn't watching it, but she was doing her own thing, sort of like near me while I was watching, and like they kept saying like Dirty White Boys, and she's like, what are you watching? Like at a certain point it seems like kind of embarrassing. So it's not necessarily the blood, but it depends on like how you are portraying things. But I think like I would say if it becomes like a hardcore match, sort of, and usually they say that for like pay-per-view wrestling, but like something that's more like garbage wrestling, that's like a little bit, not a little bit, but that's embarrassing, and it's very hard to consider yourself mainstream if you're going to do that sort of thing. But a little blood, I mean, it could happen in boxing or UFC, where which have somewhat of a crossover audience. So I don't think that alone would turn people off, but it could be a contributing factor.
I think that, the blood and everything in boxing, female UFC fans, I remember when Brock Lesnar fought Frank Mir, I went to a Hooters, and I don't know if it was a case of the men were just bringing their wives along as a date, let's go out and have a few beers and watch the fight at Hooters, but in my experience, females, especially my wife, are not keen. If I was to tell my wife, let's go to Hooters for dinner, she's going to look at me and laugh. She's going to say no, because it's Hooters. She doesn't want me oogling women in tight orange short pants, hot pants. But when I went there, when, this was many, many years ago, there was a lot of women watching UFC. There's a lot of women now watching this Triller crap. So I don't buy the blood as a reason. I really don't buy the blood as a reason. I think that people are finally starting to see the light and see how stupid this stuff can really be and how illogical it can be. As much as they say, oh, we want to get back to the way wrestling used to be, they're really not. And it's funny how when this first started, I can't stand the Young Bucks. I can't stand Omega. Everything Jim Cornette has said about them is true, in my opinion. And I told my friends who I do podcasts with, AC and Jeff Edwards, I said, watch it. It's not going to be booked right. You got a money mark running things. It's going to be like a bunch of kids in a treehouse. Nothing's going to make sense. They're going to act like BTE is canon, which now it pretty much is. And here we are, 2 years later, and they've constantly come out. I've had to give them the old I told you so, and they've had to give me the acknowledge that, hey, you're right. We were right. You're right all along. The problem is that people, listen to Dave Meltzer too much. And clearly Meltzer has it in with those guys, and he's friends with them, so he's not going to badmouth the product but so much. But I thought it was refreshing to finally see him go, hey, here's some pinholes that I'm finding in the booking. As far as AEW goes, they recently did a house show. And from what I heard, the house show did very well. I don't know if it's sold out. Did you hear if it's sold out or not?
I'm not sure. I think it either it did or it was probably close. It's sometimes hard to tell because they keep sort of changing how they're scaling the venue.
Yeah.
due to COVID and so on. So I think I had read that they had expanded the pod seating a little bit due to demand. So it probably sold out, or it did among their higher numbers, which is, for now, like a little bit over 1,000.
So you mentioned on your show, I believe it was the last episode or the episode before, of why AEW is taping everything and why they have 2 dark shows, and they got 70-some people on the roster. They're doing 12-match dark shows that are airing on YouTube. Way too much, in my opinion. But you said the reason why is so that they can use it kind of as a feeder system for the main roster and showcase talent and evaluate talent, more importantly. Give John Schuyler here from North Carolina, from this area, has done a couple AEW dark episodes. I find it funny how Leva Bates has been there since the beginning, yet she's not featured. But you get all these other guys that are. Do you think that they missed an opportunity? And I said this on a podcast a couple weeks ago or last week. Do you think they missed a big opportunity by at least not putting that house show on BR Live?
So what was interesting is when they showed sort of like brief snippets of that show, sort of like to make it relevant. So they brought in I'm assuming they brought in their same camera crew. So even though they called it a house show, I think that they will utilize it at some point. With BR Live last time, they had some issues, and it seemed to be a negative, in terms of whatever payoff and whatever deal that they have with them, that it didn't seem worthwhile to do it there. So I think they're reluctant to do it on that platform now. But, the word is that sort of like the cons are becoming, I'm sure they were aware, but are becoming more aware that, streaming rights are hot. So here you have a whole show that no one has seen. So if you were to end up doing a streaming platform or to hook up, you have something in your content library that would be like, hey, we have X amount of content you've already seen, and we have these shows that haven't been released before.
Right. I'm curious because I also discussed this, and this could kind of be the same answer of, hey, they want to be paid for their content. But I have to assume that when Lucha Underground went on to Netflix, Robert Rodriguez, who owned El Rey, I'm assuming he got a kickback off of that. Is it safe to assume that he got money in that deal?
If he had a stake right in the Lucha Underground, then wherever they're distributing it, then it should be divvied up in the right way. But it's interesting, it's so complicated with Lucha Underground and AAA, because being partly owned by AAA, but then by another company, AAA wasn't supposed to promote in the States because this other company that they partly owned had the exclusive rights to it. So it became such a mess, and it's still a mess because MLW has this thing that's Azteca Underground, which is kind of seems like homage, or sort of like people are thinking about it like it's Lucha Underground, but it's not. And then Lucha Underground's owners are like trademarking their own stuff or renewing those. So, it sort of is still sorting itself out.
I'll tell you where I was going with that question. There's a meaning behind why I asked that. I can go on demand right now on Xfinity and watch Dynamite from like the last 6 or 7 weeks, I think. At least the last 3. I don't think AEW is making any money off that. If they are, it's a small amount. So TNT kind of has some distribution rights to this show. TNT is owned by Warner Media, or AT&T. Pretty much, it's all owned by AT&T. When HBO Max first launched, they had banners around ringside hyping up HBO Max. Why Well, for 2 parts. One, do you think they should be putting Dynamite on HBO Max, kind of like how Lucha Underground was on Netflix? I mean, they could chuck a little bit more money to AEW for doing that. I mean, HBO Max is not going to shell out money. It's all it's all Warner Media. It's just a matter of which pocket is it coming from at the end of the day. But do you think they should be on there? And why haven't they done anything to promote Dynamite on HBO Max? HBO Max right now is the highest. It's as far as the streaming services out there, I believe it's the highest subscription cost. So you think that they would want to stuff more content out there, especially sports content, out there to make it seem a little bit more appealing?
So I don't know if they're still dealing with the same issues that they were sort of like during the AOL Time Warner merger. I was reading an old book about that recently, where sort of there was these fiefdoms, and you would think like it's all for the greater good for this public company, and if one wins, we all win. But sort of you have these executives in each of the department, and they're kind of thinking about their own strategies.
Oh, it's still there.
So a few months ago, a very credible source reached out to me when I was speculating about HBO Max, and basically told me that if HBO Max wanted AEW on, they would be on, but they don't want them.
Jeez, that's money lost in my opinion. Yeah, it's not going in TNT's pocket; it's going in HBO's pocket. But at the end of the day, it's all going in Warner Media's pocket, which is all going in AT&T's pocket. And you mentioned that corporate, what do you call it? Internal fighting, if you will. It's still there. I don't know if you followed what went on with Zack Snyder and the Justice League, the whole Snyder Cut situation. Warner Brothers did not want that at all. They don't want it. They don't want to be a part of Zack Snyder anymore. They don't want anything to do with him. But AT&T, as the parent company, made a ruling that okay, this this streaming service is launching. We need to get eyeballs on the product. We need to get subscribers. Give him $70 million more dollars. They gave the guy $70 million, folks, just to finish a movie and do reshoots of a movie that was already released. Granted, it's not his version, but there was a groundswell on Twitter and the internet, and release the Snyder Cut. It didn't go a day without trying to trend. It really mystifies me how that corporate infighting still happens. It's happening in Disney right now within Lucasfilm. It's happening with Jon Favreau and Kathleen Kennedy. It amazes me how these corporations cannot, be team players.
Yeah, it seems like the egos always take over, and it's kind of, as long as it's not your headache, it's kind of fun to follow all the machinations of that. I don't follow soccer or football, as they would say, as much, or really at all, but I do get it sort of like in my feed where, from what I understand now, some of the major leagues, the major clubs are trying to break away into their own super club, but the leagues that they're already under have television deals. So it's kind of fun. Each sort of like, it feels like it's only in the world of pro wrestling, but as we look at like entertainment and sports, it's going on in each of them in their own unique ways.
You wrote a book about video games. It was video game oriented. I want to talk to you. Do you still follow video games and the industry and everything, specifically when it comes to? Because I wanted to ask you about, they announced WWE 2K22. Did you follow what the 2K20 fiasco and how bad that game was at all?
Only peripherally. I definitely remember the backlash on that, and the that they had to release patches due to all the bugs there, and it wasn't well received.
There are other wrestling video games coming out. I'm looking here now. There's a YouTube channel out there called Smack
Alright guys,
Talks.
welcome back to the channel,
and if that'll pause, people will stop hearing it. Sorry. There are other wrestling games.
one of the biggest questions to...
Why is that still playing? Sorry. There's other wrestling games coming out. There's one, I believe, called the Wrestling Code. It's kind of like a throwback to No Mercy on the N64. That's the game that everybody holds up as the holy grail of wrestling video games. Half their roster that's in that video game now are signed to AEW or Impact or WWE. So they're probably not going to be in the game, folks. If they are, it'll be surprising. You said you followed it peripherally as far as like the backlash of it goes. Do you think give me your opinion on this. Do they need to get away from 2K and maybe just go to EA or some more reputable company that will actually treat it with a little bit of respect?
I guess it's sort of, when you think about the bottom line, whoever is giving them the biggest rights fees or percentage of games sold. But I think if they do focus on that a little bit too much, it is a missed opportunity, because a lot more people than I had expected sort of became hooked on wrestling by first being exposed to the video games and realizing, oh, there's more to this. There's a whole promotion or a whole television show. Let me go check that out. And I think everyone has sort of their own era of wrestling games, and if your era has ones that aren't that appealing, that's an opportunity lost. For me, my wrestling peak was during the NES days, the original Nintendo, and certainly when arcades were more of a thing. Those sort of things. So I had WrestleMania, and there was 5 or 6 people you could play as, like Honky Tonk Man, Andre, Macho Man, Hogan, and so on. And then there was Tecmo Wrestling with generic characters, but it was a lot of fun as well.
Do you still play video games at all?
Generally, no, except my son plays a lot through our Kindle Fire, where he talks a lot about wanting a system. We're kind of apprehensive about that, but we download some things. So he's very impressed with my skills on a Thomas game, where basically to win the race, you just have to tap as fast as possible. Sometimes I'm not even watching the race; I'm just tapping, and then he lets me know that I did a good job.
Let me ask you. You could refuse to answer this if you want. You said he wants a console. How old is he?
He's 6 years old.
I'll be honest with you. My son has been playing video games essentially since he was about 5 years old, if not younger. Go ahead and buy him one. Start him off with like a PlayStation 4. Don't go out there and buy him the high-end, latest and greatest. He's going to want it after a while, because they're slowly phasing out the PS4, but as long as, and I'm assuming you are, a responsible parent and can pay attention to the ratings, this is T for teen, don't go out there and buy him Grand Theft Auto, but the wrestling games are okay for him to buy, start off with those. He'll have fun with them. I can see why he's wanting a console, because all the kids at school probably have one, so I think you're safe. Just, I remember when Grand Theft Auto 5 came out, and that game is not for children at all. I go to GameStop to pick up my copy, and kid after kid after kid, I'm talking 10-year-olds, 9-year-olds, are coming in there with their parents to pick this game up because their parents are having to buy it. They're not going to sell it to a kid. And they're telling, the people behind the counter are telling these parents, this is rated M for mature. You know that this has cussing, nudity, blood, drinking, drug use in it. Oh, it's okay. Yeah, go ahead and give it to them. It amazes me how people just don't know And then we have, not to get political, I don't believe video games contribute toward violence at all, as far as people wanting to go out there and shoot up places. But I will have to say that I would never, my kid does not play Grand Theft Auto. I refuse to let him. But I think as long as you can limit what the kid, what your kid's doing, go out there and buy him a console. It's time.
Fair enough.
I had my, they're expensive, but I got my Nintendo, my very first Nintendo, for my 5th birthday. So, and I was playing my mom and dad's from the time I was about 2 or 3. It's the age we live in. I see kids in strollers holding cell phones, playing games on their mom and dad's cell phones. So, let's wrap it up here. Thank you so much for coming on again. I love having you on and picking your brain about stuff. Where can people find you on social media? Go ahead, plug the podcast. The floor is yours.
First of all, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to connect, and it's good to talk as things are hopefully getting better in the world. But love to hear from everyone, especially on Twitter. I'm on there way too much, just like everyone else. Lavie Marg, Lavie Marg. You could check out my website, lioncubjobsearch.com. Why it's called that is a long story, but we were talking about sort of finding the podcast. I try to have one link at the very top where we'll archive all of the podcasts, no matter how we're being distributed. And if you wanted to check out my book called Trump Mania, if you still want to remember those days, check it out on any Amazon platform, the paperback or the Kindle edition.
I think I asked you this back in December about the Trump Mania. And I want to ask you this again because it has been a few months. Biden's term is fully in there, and Trump is rumored to start his own social media thing and maybe even his own political party. Are we going to see an update to that book, maybe a second or third edition of that book?
That's a great question. Definitely creating the second one. I felt I became better at research, and I did discover so many things, and there has been more progression to the story, but I would say probably that's the end of things for now, unless the rights are open. So if any publishers are listening or anyone that wants to explore it further, I'm open to it, should there be the right opportunity.
I will put a link to the Spreaker page where you can find they only have 3 up there right now, but if you want to go over to the 2-Man Power Trip network and look up the other, I believe it's the other 17, go ahead. But I will link to the Creative Control Spreaker page where you can find all their podcasts, including Business of the Business. Lavie, it's always good to talk to you, my friend. Take care, stay safe, and maybe we'll chat with you again in a few months.
You too. Looking forward.
All right, folks. We'll be right back here. We're going to wrap everything up next.
Here's us.
Here's Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Here's my Aunt Louise.
Can she make a cereal with the intense taste of Cinnamon Toast Crunch?
A teeny bit of cinnamon and sugar.
No way. It's packed with the taste of cinnamon and sugar for a totally intense taste.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch, part of this complete breakfast.
It's got the taste you can see.
Yummy!
Now you'll find a free fruit roll-up with Wendell in specially marked boxes.
And now, we're back with the Underdog Show on Nickelodeon.
This Mega Nicktoon Monday, we're giving you a 3-hour-long mega jolt of Nick's most twisted twosome. It's Ren and Stimpy on Mega Nicktoon Monday. This Monday on Nick.
You do something helpful every day. Like today, you took out the garbage. So for you, every day, Pizza Hut has the Kids Pizza Pack. You get a personal pan pizza, cup, and cool surprise. Every day! You deserve it, because you're a kid. And you did let Aunt Dottie kiss you. Every Tuesday night is still Kids Night at Pizza Hut. Kids get a free personal pan pizza when grown-ups order their pizza. Why do you deserve Kids Night at Pizza Hut? Because you're a kid.
Something incredible is happening that will give Sega Genesis even more power. Game Genie now works with your Sega Genesis system in most games, like Sonic the Hedgehog, Kid Chameleon, Toe Jam, and Earl. Game Genie for Sega Genesis.
Excellent. You cast them aside, exiled to the closet. Rescue them. Get most of your old video games out of the closet and play them like new with Game Genie. Jump higher, change levels, live forever. Excellent! For your Nintendo Entertainment System, Game Genie from Galoob.
All right, everybody. I'd like to thank Mr. Lavie Margolin for coming in today and or hopping on today and joining us. That interview was actually recorded a couple days ago, back on Tuesday. So I'd like to thank him for joining us. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and we will see you down the road.
Goodbye.
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 Goodbye.